We spend so much time talking about building better communities, trying to come up with these grand blueprints and master plans. But what if the real key is already all around us, in a natural pattern we just need to recognize? Today, we're going to dive into this idea of emergent order and see how it shapes, well, everything, from a simple pine branch to the way we live and work together.
Okay, so take a look at this. On top, you've got a pine branch. It's a complete living system. You see it, and your brain instantly says, yep, that's order. But then, look below. You have the exact same pieces, the stem, the needles, but now they're all separated into these neat little piles. The image calls this chaos. Kind of weird, right? I mean, it's organized, but it's not alive. And that right there is the big question we're going to tackle. What can this simple contrast, this living branch versus a pile of its own parts, teach us about our communities, our jobs, our own lives? And believe me, the answer is, well, it's a real game changer.
To get to that answer, we've got to start by looking at what the image calls chaos. It's not just a messy pile. It actually represents a really deep, fundamental problem, the problem of disconnection.
See, here's the thing. Those 5 neat stacks of needles are considered chaos for one very specific reason. They've been cut off from their source, from the stem. The only reason they mean anything to us is because our brains know, hey, those are supposed to be on the branch. They're just parts without a whole, fragments that have totally lost their relationship to the living system they came from.
And this is such a powerful way to think about what happens in our own society. Unlike those needles, we can move around. We can get separated from our hometowns, our families, our history, our grounds, so to speak. And when we have all that freedom, it's easy to forget just how deeply connected we all are. And that can lead to this feeling of disorder, of chaos in our own lives.
So, if that's the chaos, what's the alternative? Well, instead of getting hung up on the disconnected parts, let's flip the script and look at the living system. And we're going to use this tree as our guide.
All right, I want you to try something. Imagine for a second that your unique self, everything you are a single leaf, or, a single pine needle in this case. But the thing is, you're not just some leaf floating around in the wind. No way. You're connected. You're a single leaf on a branch, and that branch is part of a whole tree. And those trees, those are the communities of our common life, our families, our neighborhoods, the places we work. We are fundamentally part of a bigger, living system. And that right there is the heart of this whole idea, emergent order. This isn't some top-down master plan kind of order. It's the natural, complex, and kind of beautiful order that just happens from our existing relationships. It's just like the elegant pattern of a pine branch, which emerges naturally from how every single needle connects to the stem.
Okay, but any living thing needs fuel to survive, right? It needs nourishment. So, how do resources actually flow through this big tree of common life?
Well, this is where the metaphor gets really interesting. The sap flowing through the tree, you can think of that as a measure of how equitable our connections are. Just like a real tree might have some branches that get more nutrients, in our society, this sap is the flow of resources. And let's be real, it's pretty obvious that some branches of our community are just not getting sustained as well as others.
This chart here really lays it all out for us. So you've got the sap, that's all the social, economic, and political stuff. Then there's the sunlight, think of that as all the shared knowledge we've built up as a species. And the air, that's the fruits of our collective labor, the things we all create together. But here's the kicker. Your access to that sap is what determines how well you, as a leaf, can even make use of the sun and the air.
And man, that really puts the responsibility on us, doesn't it? A truly healthy or beloved community isn't one that just sits there. It's one that is actively working to make sure that the sap, all those vital resources, is flowing fairly, so that every single individual leaf gets nourished.
All right, so if we buy into this whole living system idea, what do we do with it? How does it actually change the way we organize ourselves? Let's take this from a cool metaphor to something we can act on. So what we have here is a choice, a real fork in the road. On one side, you have arbitrary organization. That's our pile of needles, right? It totally ignores how we're really connected, and it leads straight to that feeling of chaos and disconnection. But on the other side, we can build meaning-filled organizations that are actually based on our real connections with the goal of enriching and sustaining every single person.
And really, this is the bottom line. If we want to build something that lasts, something that feels human and has a real purpose, it has to be grounded in this idea. It has to remember that we're not just a bunch of random parts in a box.
We're a living, breathing, interconnected system.
All right, to bring this all home, I want to try something a little different. Let's take this out of the abstract and make it really personal with a quick meditation.
So just take a second. Wherever you are, get comfortable. And just imagine yourself in a community space with people you work with, you create with, you share your life with. Breathe that image in and let it fill you.
Now, in that space in your mind, look around. See the faces. Some you know well, some maybe you don't. And just let it sink in. All the different ways, the invisible threads that already connect you to every single one of them. And then, zoom out a little. Remember that these connections, they're like branches on your tree. They spread out from you, but your tree is standing in a whole forest, rooted in a common soil with so many others. We're all in this together, part of this huge, incredible living forest.
So, I'll leave you with this one last question to think about. How does your community, your work, your neighborhood, your family, how does it remember its connections? And what's one small thing you could do to help it see the whole, living tree instead of just a pile of disconnected parts?